The Four Horsemen have invited the building community to join them in the build of a Hot Wheels 2 Jet Z casting that you see there in a Mars crawler theme. It's an interesting looking little casting. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it at this point of the game. And I do end up taking some liberties with the Mars crawler theme. But you'll see what happens with this. I drilled it out. You see me do it a million times. Well, maybe not a million. But take it apart. Metal base, which is fantastic. Particularly for this build. Plastic interior, plastic glass, metal body. Threw it in citrus strip, both the base and the metal body. And started taking a look at it. And it's about at this point that I realize what I'm going to do. Like I said, I did loosen those wheels out of there earlier too when I stripped the base. I decided to chuck the casting, chuck the glass that goes with it, since without the casting you don't need the glass, chuck those wheels. And this is what I'm going to keep from the 2 Jet Z. Because when I look at it this way, what I see is something very similar to a Lunar Rover, which is the direction I went. Mars crawler, Lunar Rover, tomato, tomato. Now, I do want to keep this in 2 pieces, and I'm kind of scrap building this thing. And so anybody familiar with like building computers or circuit board work know about standoffs. And so in my scrap pile, I have some standoffs that keep circuit boards away from a case. Basically, they're tubes in most cases that are tapped to accept screws. You screw them into the base to anchor them to the base. The circuit board screws in from the other side. And there you go. Well, I decided I wanted to use some standoffs I've taken from other projects. Basically, I keep ripping things apart and keeping the scraps for future use. And I thought, well, let me put the standoffs on the metal base. I'll then anchor them to the plastic piece. Then undo the screws, have basically the plastic body piece with the standoffs attached to it, and then the base will attach to that body. And I'm probably using a lot of words to say things that are just confusing as hell. But hopefully you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. Now you notice that back standoff stands up pretty high. I decided to use that. I was going to cut it down, and then I decided not to because I have another scrap I want to attach to it. So once I redo attaching this, I'm pretty happy with the direction this is taking, that this is going to work. I did use a hot air dryer, hot air blower, to heat that plastic center section to make sure it would handle glue better, that it would be more accepting of stuff like CA glue. I did take a little tiny piece of tape, which seems kind of goofy, to cover the hole on the top of that standoff, and then to attach it, at least at first here. I used the resin pin. I filled that little hole in with resin, and then you'll see me use the UV light on the other end of the pin to cure that. And so I used that to hold it in place. The back one, I didn't need to really anchor down at first because it's held in pretty snugly into that body. I had to drill the hole in the back a little bit wider, and then that standoff slid right in. And so at this point, it's just lightly, in effect, tacking that in. Now I'm going to get serious about it. And so what I'm doing, just to play it safe, is I'm taking a little bit of that Rin wax, putting it in the hole of each standoff. And I'm going to coat the screws with wax too, because I'm about to use CA glue. And I want to make sure if I screw up and I get any of it in those holes on the standoffs, I don't want them becoming blocked. I was using the wax to make sure that those screws would always be able to come in and out easily. So here you see me putting that screw in. And so both of them have the screws in. When I take the next step of putting a pretty thick coating of CA glue in the inside of that casting, along with some baking powder for strength. And there you kind of see it. Those things aren't going anywhere at this point. So now I can attach it to the base. Those are Scuderia wheels that I thought would look good on this project with the direction I'm going. The chrome definitely would not work. And so what I end up shooting everything with is a Krylon ivory color paint. Everything, the wheels, both parts of the casting, the interior and the base, all of those get hit with the ivory first. I do go over different areas with Nuln Oil, but the look I'm going for on this is basically like a moon dust covered rover type vehicle. You can see I've weathered the rubber wheels as well. Basically, those got painted too. I'm not using the Scuderia axles because they're very tough. You can't crimp them as easily. And so I just use straight pins for that. At this point, I'm throwing that center section on there to get an idea, and I'm really liking this effect. And so I decide, yep, that's the direction I'm going. Now I'm just going to glue some crap onto this center section. And truly, these are just electronic parts that I've ripped out of all kinds of stuff. They're parts of cases, parts of you name it. And so I just start attaching this stuff, all with CA glue. There you see the thick gel super glue. And I just lay a bead of that on the front. That metal ring is going to go on there. And then inside of that, I have some electronic part from a circuit board. I am not sure what it is. To be absolutely completely honest, I think it might be a capacitor or some sort of, I don't know, transistor maybe? I don't know. It's a 2-pin piece, and that'll be dropping in there in a second. And I leave the pins sticking up as if there's some kind of sensor on the front of this vehicle. And I did put them at an angle just to top it off. Because I'm sure this thing somehow rotates or does something. I had that plastic part that, again, I think that was off of a telephone. And then you see those two little background things. Those are other pieces that came off a circuit board. I believe those were short screws, as I recall. I glued those to those fins on the back. That plastic, like radar dish kind of thing. I end up drilling a hole in that off camera and putting a short piece of an axle into it. So it has like a probe sticking out of it. So it looks more like a radar dish kind of thing. This, I don't know what the heck this piece was. I just like the look of it sticking off the front as if it was yet another sensor. There were two little like headlights on the front of this. I ended up using the pin vise just to drill holes into that. That I was just kind of test fitting. I hadn't glued it in at that point. I do shorten those leads a little bit because I thought it was sticking out just slightly too far. So I took, I don't know, probably about 1/8 of an inch off of it. And then, like I said, that got hit with the ivory paint. And then I decided I wanted to paint, well, anybody from my generation definitely remembers on a lot of the moon landings, that kind of thing, the vehicles, and it seemed like everything had that gold foil in different areas on it. And so I was trying to simulate that gold foil. And then what I did is I dusted it after that to give it the moon dust kind of look with Tamiya primer, the Tamiya white primer. And so that's why you'll notice nothing on this, the golds and everything are not super crisp because they're covered in moon dust. At least that's the thinking. And then went over that with a flat clear. There you see the top and bottom pieces do screw together. It is a 2-piece casting. It is major elements, except for the body, of the 2-jet Z casting that the Four Horsemen wanted us to use in this build. So it's a very washed out kind of look. But if you look at like the lunar lander, that's or the lunar rover, it's kind of what it was. So like I said, I took some liberty with the Mars crawler theme once I saw what I saw inside this casting. So there's where we started. And you saw what I threw away from this thing. And here's where it ended up. I had fun with this. This is goofy as hell. But it was fun. You'll notice that it's like I didn't super detail the seat. There are no electronics like on a dash, because if you look back at the Lunar Rover, it didn't have anything like that. You'd have to assume that a vehicle like this would independently be controlled or be controlled from inside the suit who was ever occupying it, if someone was occupying it. This one has the ability to be occupied or not. So there are some glamour shots coming up. I would like to thank the Four Horsemen for hosting this event and inspiring me to take this in a real bizarre direction. Please check out all of the other people in this invitational. I do have a link to the Four Horsemen Diecast channel in the description for this video. I hope y'all like this. And everybody stay safe and healthy out there. I'll catch you in the next one.